At the outset of Star Wars: A New Hope, a naive boy named Luke is helping his uncle buy new droids for their farm. Luke and Uncle Owen purchase an R2 unit that by coincidence had once helped Luke's long-since deceased mother's spaceship elude a blockade of the planet of which she was queen, around the time she met Luke's father Anakin as a small slave boy. Anakin likely having been conceived and brought to life by mystical methods developed by an evil Sith Lord named Darth Plagueis, who learnt this technique of life generation from a coven of lesbian space witches, who exploited a vergence in the mystical power the Force and raised Force baby twins in an abandoned mining installation, recurrently gathering to writhe around and gaze rapturously at the night sky while chanting the power of one, the power of two, the power of many, to the strains of a non-diegetic orchestra until interrupted by Jedi, one of whom tried to force the issue of obtaining one of the twins for off-world institutionalized Force training because his boredom and homesickness on the remote planet drove him to an impulsive decision, part of a chain of events that culminated with one of the twins' mothers turning into a scary apparition of non-corporeal black smoke that provoked her death by an alarmed Jedi who stabbed her particles with a lightsaber, inciting one of the twins to a lifetime of exacting vengeance, and her trauma being exploited to bring her to the dark side by a stranger in league with Darth Plagueis, who would become the master of Darth Sidious, the future Chancellor of the Republic Senate, and then evil dark side dictator of the galaxy, who in turn would become the master of Luke's father, Anakin Skywalker, later renamed Darth Vader, who by coincidence is just above Luke's planet in orbit at this moment, though neither know of the other's existence, and Darth, encased in a black mechanical suit, is presently preoccupied with obtaining plans of a massive planet-destroying space station secreted into the database of R2, who was joined in the Skywalker family's droid purchase by C-3PO, who, by another coincidence, was built from spare parts as a hobby by Anakin, Luke's father, now Darth Vader, when he was a slave boy, who would ultimately leave his planet in the company of two Jedi Masters, one of whom, Obi-Wan Kenobi, would become his mentor before an unfolding tragedy of coercion and manipulation would culminate in Obi-Wan and Darth fighting each other to the death in an epic duel that would leave Anakin, latterly Darth Vader, limbless and apparently dying on a bank next to a lake of lava, only for the two to then face off again 10 years later on a desolate planet where Obi-Wan would again get the better of Darth. Luke's uncle, facilitating the purchase of the droids, had, only 10 years ago, joined with his wife, Aunt Beru, in arming themselves to stave off an assault on their property by a woman who was attacked by Darth Vader in the Jedi Temple when she was a girl, and who now, in an elaborate long-term scheme, joined with the dark side and contributed to the stalking of remaining Jedis and Force sensitives, perpetrating heinous murders and dismemberments with the much-deferred objective of eventually killing Darth Vader, Luke's father, out of revenge, with young Luke at the time not remembering much of the details or faces because he fell unconscious from the strain of running into the night while his aunt and uncle made their last stand in defense of their homestead. Eventually, young Luke, when cleaning up the droids, is shown a hologram projection of the desperate princess who left a message in R2, hoping the message gets to now old Obi-Wan Kenobi, the message having inadvertently ended up by coincidence with her long-lost twin brother, the two of them having been separated when their mother died of despair in childbirth, and they were sent to different locations for their safety. Princess Leia is hoping that old Obi-Wan will help her, a man with whom she spent an intense and unforgettable span of time with when she was 10 years old, being kidnapped twice, including by the young woman who would later harass Luke's aunt and uncle in their own home, and even being bustled away toward safety under a massive green trench coat by Obi-Wan, and they're sharing a solemn farewell, though much of this will seem ambiguous in Leia's memory. When R2 goes rogue and heads out toward Obi-Wan's cave dwelling, Luke follows, and upon encountering Obi-Wan Kenobi, he is diffident about leaving home in a galactic quest, until the murder of his aunt and uncle leaves him little choice, and Luke, Obi-Wan and the droids head to find a ship to leave the star system, encountering a smuggler named Han, whose ship's navigation system is powered by the enduring soul of a robot, and whose co-pilot is a Wookiee, whose life partner is named Lala, and they have a son named Lumpy. Together, the gang blast off in an adventure to save the princess and bring hope to the galaxy, the beginning of a noble quest that will conclude with Luke fighting, then redeeming his father, who will pass away after an eventful and tragic life that began with him being conjured into life by a Sith who learnt the Force to create life from a planet formerly occupied by a coven of similarly life-creating lesbian space witches.